What is happening, everybody? James Hancock here. I'm back with a spoiler-free review for Demon Slayer Kimetsu no Yaiba to the Hashira Training. And I know that sounds like a mouthful, but it's not even really a movie. It's the end of the previous season and an introduction of the next season, or the next story arc. And the reason I'm saying story arc instead of season, there's some discrepancies between the US and Japan on how the various seasons are listed, but I'll get to how to kind of unpack all those little episodes versus movies in a second. Let me just start with, I'm a recent convert to Demon Slayer. I foolishly thought for the last couple of years, it's just going to be too much story, it's going to be too big, it's too complicated. I've missed the window to get in the Demon Slayer, and never have I been more wrong, and never have I been more happy to be more wrong, because when I got to the end of the 50-plus episodes a couple days ago, I was like, shit, I wish I had like 50 more to watch. Like, I had to go back and start rewatching certain scenes and certain episodes because I realized, oh my God, like my appetite for this story knows no bounds. And I even went on Amazon and picked up the manga, which basically, if you pick up volume 15, it perfectly captures the end of the Swordsmith Village arc and the beginning of the To the Hashira Training arc. And so it's a perfect way not only to just kind of get a little head start on this latest movie, but it also allowed me to do this beautiful compare and contrast in terms of how is the manga written and drawn and how are the films animated. And it's hard to think of a better example right now in contemporary entertainment of seeing an animated series perfectly capturing the story, the style, the tone, the individual frames, the panels, the story beats, and obviously the manga is huge. But they're doing a remarkable job of capturing those story arcs. And as I was watching it over the last couple of days, I became distinctly aware of some intense feelings of jealousy. Because right now in America, with both film and television, the norm is take a book or a video game or a comic book series or a classic movie and then update it for modern audiences and basically rip out its spine, crush its skull, make it unrecognizable, and run legendary franchises right into the ground. And there are a few very small, rare exceptions. Like, I'm looking forward to seeing Dune Part 2 on Sunday. But in general, it's a very frustrating time right now in America in terms of following certain franchises that have been around for a long time. And so it's almost like discovering Demon Slayer was the perfect antidote for all those frustrations because it's brand spanking new. Like, you can't get mad about them changing something from the past because it's not from the past. The manga started in 2016, and there's no way I'm going to get this guy's name right. I've already looked up how to pronounce it, but Kayoharu Gotoge. I'm never saying his name again on this video. That's all you get. He wrote it and he illustrated it. And it was published in this magazine called Weekly Shonen Jump from February 2016 to May 2020. And all of its chapters are captured across 23 total volumes. So the story is finished. They have an ending. Like, all the hardcore fans know exactly where the story is going. So there's no danger at all of the show pulling a Game of Thrones and basically overtaking or overcoming the original author and having to make up new stuff. Like, the material's out there, and they're just dutifully and beautifully going along and adapting all the major story arcs. And obviously you can't include everything, but it's just been so much goddamn fun watching this because for me it's like the definition of pure escapist fantasy, great tales of high adventure. It's just pure pop culture euphoria, and the good news is it keeps getting better. I think the show doesn't really find its rhythm until about 25, 30 episodes deep. And it features this really cool premise where on the surface it's simple, but it allows for so much, variety and experimentation and improvisation as we see the various demon slayers as well as the demons in the show doing battle. But at the core of the story, you have a character named Tanjiro Kamado who grows up in the mountains. He's really strong. He spends all of his days collecting charcoal and selling it in the local town or chopping down trees. Like, he's brawny, but he's not a warrior. But one day he comes back from town and his entire family's been massacred by a demon. Or at least everybody's been massacred except for one. He has one surviving sister, Nezuko, but she's been infected and she's turning into a demon. And from that point on, he just devotes all of his energy to killing demons, but also trying to find a way to preserve his sister and one day possibly restore her to humanity. But in the meantime, he just carries her around in this little crate on his back. And anytime things get really hot or really tough, she will pop out and aid him in battle, and they'll leap into battle side by side. And it's just so goddamn cool. And because she refuses to eat human flesh, she doesn't have any of the demonic urges. And so, like, I guess the only downside to her approach to being a demon is that because she doesn't eat human flesh, once she's kind of spent all of her energy, she has to go into these almost like a coma-like state and sleep for a long time. But as I was watching the first season, what it reminded me of a little bit was like Italian spaghetti westerns, like Django walking around, dragging a giant coffin behind him, whereupon he opens it up and there's a huge Gatling gun inside. But it's such a cool idea of having like a wandering warrior with a giant box on his back contained within this little demon girl who can beat the fuck out of people. But within this kind of framework, we have this incredible, like, larger than life struggle between the Demon Slayer core and these demons led by a figure whose name I cannot remember off the top of my head, but he's the big baddie, the big heavy of the entire story, this giant epic saga. And what's cool about the demons here is that the more people they eat and the longer they stick around, the more powerful they become, and they start developing all these strange and unusual powers. So they become these like extremely powerful supervillains, whereas the Demon Slayers, they remain mortal, and they have all these breathing techniques. And these breathing techniques basically allow them to achieve superhuman feats. But if they lose an arm or they lose a head or whatever, they're not growing it back like a demon. And what I've loved about this story so far is all the little side characters within the Demon Slayer core, like the main friends for Tanjiro, as well as the Hashira. The Hashira are the baddest motherfuckers of them all. There are only about 7 or 8 of them left, and slowly but surely over the course of these, these handful of seasons, they either lose limbs or get killed, and they're diminishing resource, and they're trying to train the next generation, which brings us full circle to this latest movie, where we got to see one episode of the training in question, and it's an appetizer. Like, if you go into it expecting a full, complete movie experience, you're going to be incredibly frustrated, because you basically get the end of a complete experience, but then you just get like the introductory episode where everybody's kind of healing. Because as we've seen in all the previous seasons, after a giant battle, there's always like an episode or two where everybody kind of exhales, heals their wounds, buries their dead, and starts training and getting in shape again. But what's fun about this first episode from this upcoming arc is that we get to see all the surviving Hashira, and even if you retired Hashira, like the one from the Entertainment District arc, which is my favorite arc of all the various arcs. But what's great about this season is that, or this first episode, is we get to see all the Hashira in the same place, and all like the next generation that are rising through the ranks, because not only the Hashira cooking up different forms of training for all the candidates for becoming the next Hashira, so you're getting to see how they cater their training to their unique specialty, but in the process, the Hashira are training as well. Like, the job is never finished for the Swordsman and the Demon Slayer franchise, and the coolest part about this overall franchise is how the characters level up. Whether you're a fan of tabletop RPGs like Dungeons and Dragons, or you've played a billion video games like Elden Ring or something like that, people love to watch their characters slowly but surely train and get stronger, like increment by increment, until they finally achieve like the status of a master. And we're clearly watching a saga where, over time, Tanjiro Kamado, we've already seen all of his potential, and we've seen him defeat demons that are far beyond his ability, or that should be far beyond his ability. And obviously, he has the help of other Hashira and his friends like Inosuke and Zenitsu. And God, there's so much I want to get to, but let me stay on the leveling thing. But what I realized as I was watching this series is that this is one of those rare series that is as fun and exciting and compelling to watch as it is to play one of the video games in question. Yesterday, there was a trailer for or at least a gameplay trailer for the next expansion pack for Elden Ring, and I got all excited. So I spent the entire evening playing Elden Ring, and as I was playing, I was like, wow, like I can tell I'm almost playing in a way where I'm trying to recreate the style and emotions of the show that I just watched. But it's very rare for an entertainment franchise in film and television to be as fun and as exciting as video games today. Video games have evolved to a point where they're very hard to compete with, and as an overall market, it's a bigger, more dynamic market than film and television. But if you're obsessed with Dark Souls 1, 2, and 3 and those kinds of games, if you like Japanese role-playing games, this show is going to be so goddamn addictive that you won't know what to do with yourself. So if you're still with me at this point and you're not already an existing fan, let's break down how to get into this. There's the right way and there's the wrong way. The wrong way is the way I did it. The way I started was with the first movie. In my ignorance, I didn't really know where to start. All I knew was that the first movie was the most successful animated movie ever to come out of Japan. I was like, all right, that sounds like a good place to start. I was wrong, but that first movie is called Demon Slayer Kimetsu no Yaiba. The movie Mugen Train, and it's the Mugen Train arc. And then after the movie came out, they released, I think, 7 episodes for like a season, which was like the expanded version of that movie. And I'd say the expanded version is better because you get a lot more time with certain characters who, well, I don't want to give away any spoilers. There's a really, really fucking cool character in the Mugen Train arc, and you're going to want all the time with him that you can possibly get. But the show really officially begins with a 26-episode season. It's the biggest season of all of them. And that first season is where you want to start. You want to head over to Crunchyroll, get a subscription, because you can watch it either dubbed in English or in the original Japanese. I'm going to recommend everybody watches it in Japanese because the Japanese flavor of the dialogue is like, I wouldn't say like half the fun, but it defines this world, it defines this character. Like when you're listening to Inosuke growling and screaming and crying and just going berserk. I mean, it's some of the best voice acting I've ever heard in any animated show, and it's all in Japanese, but even though I don't understand Japanese, obviously, with subtitles, I'm able to enjoy that character to the fullest. And let's be real, half this show is just fights, so it doesn't really matter what language you watch it in. I've noticed that every single season has a similar structure where the first few episodes are very plot heavy, and the last few episodes, it's just like battle shifting into another form of the battle, into yet another form of the battle, where it's just like oh my god, like how long has this battle been going? It's so insane and so epic, but it's done so organically. You kind of don't even notice as you get deep into a season. I've just been watching nothing but fights for like the last 3 hours. Like if you want to watch the entire story right now, I think it takes about 24 hours basically to watch all of it. But like I said, you will want to see more of it, but just pretend like the movies don't exist unless you're planning on seeing this new movie in the theater. But the best way to get up to speed is just set the 3 movies aside and just watch every single episode of the show in order, which is very easy to do on Crunchyroll. And then if you want to, you can go back and watch the flicks and see how they do it. Because what's cool about this new movie is that at the very beginning, they give you a little refresher from the different seasons. They don't really give you like a summary, but they play the theme song from the credits, and then you get a few flashes and a few scenes. And I got to hear all the theme songs from all the best seasons going right into this. And that was such a cool way to kind of get back on firm footing, because if you like the show, one of the biggest treats is how the closing credits and the opening credits are always required viewing. Because with each story arc, they have new opening credits, new closing credits, and a new song. And pretty much with all these songs, I was always like on the couch, like playing air guitar or like playing air drums, or like my leg would be thrashing to the beat. Even today when I was in the theater, I could feel like my leg thrashing to the rhythm of certain songs that I recognize. But the music's incredible, but they're little like hidden scenes kind of tucked away. Like after the closing credits of every episode, they'll show you a page from the manga. Like characters will leap out of the page and they'll have these little conversations, like usually something for comic relief, and they'll introduce the next episode. But I think you're missing out on the full Demon Slayer experience unless you watch the intro credits, the episode, closing credits, and then the little hidden scene. Do it for every single episode. You can thank me later. Now, I mentioned the comic relief, and I will admit, it took me a few episodes to kind of understand where this show is coming from when it comes to the comic relief, because most of the show is very serious and very earnest, and it's like, badass warriors going up against terrifying demons, just hacking each other to pieces, and it's glorious. But when the show gets funny, and it does frequently, it's almost like the writers and the artists and the directors all like got mad cow disease and went like temporarily insane. And you're like, what is going on here? Because it's so weird and so over the top and tonally so different. And initially I was like, all right, I don't know if I can roll with this. But then the humor slowly but surely started to become one of my favorite aspects of the show. But it wasn't immediate. It didn't happen overnight. I had to kind of grow into it or learn how to understand where the show was coming from. But you need those weird, insane moments, because I think if it was nothing but just epic combat, you would get numb to it. If you don't have that insane comedy, like you need a palate cleanser. You need some relief from all these endless epic battles. And also, if you like the character of Zenitsu, and he's secretly he's one of my favorite characters, because when he's being funny, he's my least favorite character in the entire show. I think he's so insane, so over the top, and it's just like, I cannot handle hearing you screaming about your cowardice and your fear and all that kind of stuff anymore. But here's the trick with Zenitsu. When he falls asleep, he forgets that he's a coward. And when he's asleep, he becomes the biggest, baddest motherfucker of them all. Or not, maybe not the baddest motherfucker of them all, but when he's asleep and his full skills and powers are revealed, he can easily hang with Inosuke and he can easily hang with Tanjiro. Like, I love how all three of them are kind of slowly but surely leveling up together, but Zenitsu's got a thing for Nezuko, and I get it. I mean, she's very cute, very pretty, and then when she goes into combat, she grows and gets strong, gets like muscular, and anyway, she becomes like this like devil woman who's like glorious to watch in action. And my favorite part of her performance is that when she got that bamboo bar in her mouth, or the bamboo pole. It's amazing how much mileage she gets out of just the little growls and screams. When I hear her go, she's like leaping. I can't even imitate it, but you will start to live for those moments where she is roaring as she leaps into battle, starts ripping people to pieces. But because Zenitsu's in love with Nezuko, he's always having meltdowns in her presence. And if you hate the comedy, all that stuff's going to get very excessive. But if you get over the hump like I did, those strange interactions between Zenitsu and Inosuke and Nezuko will become probably your favorite parts of the show. But if you're still not convinced, it's probably because you've made up your mind thinking that this is a show for little kids. And I think some little kids would enjoy it, but some of the death sequences and some of the violence is pretty hardcore. I mean, I think at age like 5 or 6, I would have eaten this up. I mean, I was watching Voltron at that time, but Voltron it's cool but very innocent in comparison to Demon Slayer. There are a few scenes where you're like, whoa. In spite of the way the characters look and like how their faces are drawn, there are some adult themes. There's no like weird, like disturbing sexual stuff. Like if you watch a lot of Japanese animation from the 80s and 90s, filmmakers like Yoshiaki Kawajiri, who's probably my favorite, or one of my favorites in the mix. But if you watch his movies like Wicked City or Ninja Scroll, you're like, oof, okay, these are sexual and these are disturbing and these are going into some strange forbidden places. Demon Slayer is not that. Demon Slayer is high fantasy. It's not meant to be like some strange Roman orgy with swords and demons and that sort of thing. It's not like that. But what changed my mind about checking it out, I was just walking through the Regal Cinema a couple weeks ago, and I saw this poster, and I was like, holy shit, because like the characters are all covered in blood and like these grimaces. Like, maybe I've misjudged this. Maybe this is not just a show for little kids. Maybe it's something I might be into. And yeah, thankfully, I was absolutely right. And speaking of the Regal, I was there earlier today. It's cool seeing how The Boy and the Heron is still playing in the theater there at the same time that the new Demon Slayer movie is playing. I was like, that's kind of cool. 2 Japanese animated features playing at the theater at the same time, because if you're frustrated with most of the modern Hollywood franchises, whether it's The Fast and the Furious or Indiana Jones or Star Wars or Pixar or Marvel or throw a dart. Like the only franchises that I think are in good shape right now in America, like House of the Dragon at HBO, I'm excited about what the future holds. And Dune over at Warner Brothers, I'm excited about what the future holds because I've only got a few more days to wait for the latest installment. But if you love genre entertainment, if you love fantasy, sci-fi, horror, superheroes, all that stuff, it can be slim pickings in America right now, finding stuff where you can love it unreservedly, where you're not constantly like, reaching for your katana, wanting to chop people's fucking throats for fucking up your favorite characters or your favorite stories. And I'll never stop emphasizing how fidelity to the source material should be your number one concern when adapting something, like doing justice to what came before. If you love something and there's an existing fan base, trust it. You don't need to fuck with it, but so much. Obviously, film is a different medium than reading manga. I mean, reading manga is a very different experience. But I almost feel like you could do a panel to shot like comparison from the beginning up till now, just to show people how, here's a series of comics that people love and adore, and here are some filmmakers who are lovingly adapting it, and they're being rewarded with enormous success. So my only question now is, when can we expect to see the rest of this season to the Hashira Training story arc? Because I don't think there's a release date set, but it will be on Crunchyroll, and when that comes, or when it arrives, I will definitely do a full season review. And chances are, I'm probably just going to have to go ahead and just finish the comic book series. It's not a comic book, it's manga. Manga and comics, I feel like they have a common ancestor, but they are very different mediums in a lot of ways. And I miss reading comics. I mean, basically from the late 70s up through about like 2015, 2016. Spent a lot of money on comics and have got a lot of long boxes in my back room and a lot of bookshelves covered in comics. But hard to find comics these days that I can really like kind of give myself over to. But every time I read a great manga or see a great anime, I always make this vow. I say, I'm going to start consuming a hell of a lot more Japanese entertainment. And then I always kind of forget, but when it comes to genre, I mean, right now, just think about the last 2 months. We had Godzilla Minus One, amazing live-action monster movie. We had The Boy and the Heron, amazing feature film by a legendary animator, Hayao Miyazaki. And now we have a Japanese show, an anime based on a manga that's just cleaning up, conquering the world, or at least slowly but surely conquering the world. I don't know how big the fan base is in America, but I feel like there's time for people to get caught up, and I feel like the reputation will continue to grow because it'll be like one of those things like the anime for Berserk came out in the late 90s, and people are still discovering Berserk all this time later. But as I've said many times before on this channel, every generation of genre fanatics, no matter what genre of storytelling you're into, every generation deserves and needs their own franchises, their own stories, their own intellectual properties that they can call their own that define their generation. And I was lucky to grow up in the 80s where things like RoboCop and Aliens and Predator were coming out all the time. I was like, woo, sci-fi, action, all this stuff. Like in the 80s, it was a very easy time to be a fan of genre storytelling in movies. But I almost kind of feel like a little sorry when I see like a 10-year-old kid being dragged to the theater by like their 50-year-old father, like, this is my favorite superhero, so you better shut up and like it and blah, blah, blah. And then I'm going to lecture you about everything they got wrong afterwards. I'm like, yeah, I'm sure that sounds like tons of fun to a 10-year-old kid. Somebody joked recently, Hollywood needs to stop being confused as to why young kids don't want to watch movies about their parents' favorite superheroes. Like, maybe it's time for everybody to turn the page and come up with some new stories and some new franchises. And I suspect that if I were 15 right now, I wouldn't give a damn that so many franchises in America are in ruins or falling to pieces, whether that's The Witcher or Star Trek or Lord of the Rings, Rings of Power. I mean, throw a dart, you will find a franchise that is all fucked up right now. Because if I were that 15-year-old kid, I'd be like, well, I'm just going to play video games and watch anime, and I'll be fine. I'll be covered. And I think you more or less would. There's so much great stuff to watch over the last couple of decades that you could probably watch anime all day, every day, the rest of your life and never run out of shit to watch. So in the final analysis, let's just say I'm a very satisfied fan. This show scratches a lot of itches. Like, it scratches the itch that's very much always there from not reading comics anymore, not being able to find comics that I like. It scratches the itch for animation. I love animation. Speaking of animation, check out the video that I posted yesterday where Adam Rakoff and I interview American animation legend Bill Plimpton. If you're an animation fan, definitely check that out, where we talk about his debut feature film, The Toon, which is now available on Blu-ray. But I love animation, and I love comics, and I love all this stuff. But I can't handle being lectured to, and I feel like if you are on social media, you're lectured to all day, every day, for free. So when I go to the theater or when I'm buying a book or I'm buying a comic, the last thing I want is additional lectures. I'm like, you know what? I think I've heard this lecture once or twice before. Maybe keep your lecture to yourself and just try your best to entertain me to the best of your ability. And that is what Demon Slayer does. When you laugh, you will laugh hard. I mean, I'll give one spoiler. Actually, I can't even remember which season it comes from, but there's one joke where Inosuke, he's trying to get through like a small hole, but only his head will fit. And he suddenly remembers that he's double jointed, and he dislocates all of his limbs. And then wiggles through these tunnels like a worm, giggling and laughing and screaming as he does it. And I had to stop the show. I was laughing so hard. It was just so insane and so deranged hearing him laugh like that. I couldn't take it. I had to stop it. And so as a comedy, it works. As a tale of high adventure with just dudes with swords fighting scary demons, it totally works. And in a lot of ways, with the pantheon of heroes as well as the rogues gallery of demons, if you have a hunger for kick-ass superhero stories or superhero adjacent without any of the loathsome quality problems that we have currently in our American entertainment, I think this show is going to satisfy a lot of people. So I'll close with this, a question. What animation franchises are out there now that I've been neglecting or ignoring, where there are new movies and or new episodes coming where I should get up to speed, get caught up? Because as I grow increasingly bored with our domestic output, I'm going to be looking all around the world for the best entertainment I can find. And Japan, yeah, they keep on a regular basis delivering great games, great shows, great comics, great movies. So thank you to the entire nation of Japan for continuing to crank out amazing entertainment. I just had the world's biggest smile on my face every step of the way as I was watching this show, and I can't wait to watch more and review more at the appropriate time. In any case, I feel like this video, it spiraled out of control into a review of the entire season as opposed to the individual movie. My official review of the movie is, don't go see it unless you're already a diehard converted fan where you're completely up to speed. You'll have no idea what the fuck is going on if you just try to watch it as a standalone movie. Maybe it would be enough to kind of whet your appetite or get you excited or curious. But if you're going to start anywhere, start with either episode 1, or you can do it the wrong way like I did, where you start with the first movie. And I went from the movie into the Entertainment District arc, then into the Swordsmith Village arc, and then I went back and I watched all the first season, and then I watched the Mugen Train arc. So, I saw like the second half of all the episodes before I saw the first half of all the episodes, but it doesn't matter. Now I've got all those episodes stirring around in my brain, so I guess all's well that ends well, but I'm just going to recommend people start at the beginning, keep it simple, stupid, as the old expression goes. But thank you so much for listening to this rambling rant about this really, really cool show. Hope I excited the curiosity of a few people, and I hope that I said a few things that were interesting to the existing fans. But if you enjoyed this video, please consider liking the video, subscribing to the channel, hit that notification bell. I would greatly appreciate it, but more importantly, as always, onwards and upwards.